What's up, everybody? It's Jared with Capture the Magic, and we talked about in another video that Mark Woodbury, the CEO of the Universal Studios theme parks, had made the claim that Universal Studios had already eaten into market share against Disney World, and he made these statements at a Bank of America investors conference. And some of the things that Mark Woodbury said can give us some insight into how Epic is doing and also other things you can expect at Epic Universe and the other Universal Studios parks. So in this video, what we're going to do, instead of going through some other articles out there that kind of highlight some of the things, I found a transcript of this, and we're not going to go through the entire thing because that would be incredibly boring.
Good point.
But just the parts that relate to the theme park specifically. So that is what we're going to do here today. So again, this was from the Bank of America 2025 Media, Communications, and Entertainment Conference. And as I said in the other video, I love Mark Woodbury. I think he is a great mix of a creative mind in terms of he's been with Universal for a very long time. In doing so, he is very guest oriented in terms of delivering on experiences. So I think when you have somebody running your theme parks that has a background in the designing of theme park attractions, I think that's a great mix. It'd be like Joe Rohde or Tony Baxter becoming the head of the Disney parks. I think that would be a great thing to have take place, and that's what you have at Universal. And they went on to talk about how he has over 30 years of experience at Universal. He's the chairman and CEO of Universal Destinations and Experiences since 2021. So he's got a lot of experience, and he's an interesting guy to listen and talk to. I could listen to him and some of the other people that I've heard from Universal's creative end really talk about theme parks. I do find it very enjoyable. You can tell the passion that really kind of comes from when they talk about these things. So one of the people asked Mark Woodbury about Epic, why they opened it, different things like that. And Woodbury said, yes, so you have to look at the strategy behind Epic. So if you rewind a few years, we had these two great parks, water park hotels, and we had reached a point in the market where we were banging up against how to continue to grow. By the way, you'll notice he said two great parks. There are 3 theme parks and a fantastic water park at Volcano Bay, but Volcano Bay is not a theme park. So Mark Woodbury and I, we are simpatico on this.
Well, there it is.
So we went out to our fan base and we asked them, what is it going to take to get you to give us more of your vacation time? And they told us, we love your intellectual property. We love your technology. We love how you create these immersive worlds. Give us more of what you do best and we'll give you more time. That's a crazy thought to ask your fan base and your paying customers what they want from you. That's a crazy thing to do in this day and age in business. And that was the origins of Epic, is that we launched into creating the most technologically advanced park we've ever created with some of the greatest intellectual property we could muster. And the results have been really strong. It's doing exactly what we wanted to do in terms of driving incremental attendance to the resort as a whole and the performance on per caps. Very strong since we opened the doors. And you can see it in merchandise, you can see it in the food offerings. A lot of great creative work went into both of those. Not without challenges when you open an entire theme park at once. I mean, when you take the technology that we deliver, even on this standalone attraction, it's always a little complicated to get it to ramp up to full speed. And we're in the process of doing that now. Nothing we didn't expect. So we're very pleased with how things are shaping out. So yet again, we talked about many times, a brand new theme park is going to have its challenges, and Mark Woodbury is very open here in saying that, as well as Universal and Comcast as a whole have been, even on their their earnings call that they had for the previous quarter, mentioning this. So this is something that for sure is part of a new theme park. They're acknowledging this, and they're saying that they're very happy with their progress. So I know some people have voiced frustrations with Epic on different levels, and it's not a perfect theme park. It has its wait time issues, the ride reliability, though continuing to get better, as he's kind of saying here. But these are all things that a new theme park or a new land are going to have happen. But this park is going to look much different in 12 months, 18 months. It is going to have much more efficiency, and there likely is still going to be some issues with potentially, the wait times. We'll have to wait and see how that ends up shaking out. And as I've said many times, I've told people to ask me my opinion of when should we visit. I've said at least, 6 months. I think if you really want a potentially more consistent experience, waiting about 6 months or longer before going. But obviously the park operations and things will improve. And he goes on later to talk about things that they eventually will do at Epic as well. But I think those things were going to be sooner rather than later in terms of the overall time frame. So one analyst asked him about, what have you seen so far in the guest mix in terms of spending in the park compared to the other 2 parks, Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure? Mark Woodbury said, yes, we're not giving specific guidance on Epic, but I can tell you that the performance on food and beverage and merchandise exceed our expectations considerably. And the front gate at Epic is a premium over our other two parks. And then when you look at the incremental attendance growth at the resort combined with those per caps, it's a pretty great start. And they had said before as well, one of the things of some investors had questioned them about should they be pricing Epic Universe higher, which I would argue they're already pricing it along with Magic Kingdom. So I think it's a pretty premium price that you're paying to go here. But they even said there that they weren't looking to necessarily charge as much as they feel like they potentially could, because they were looking at, food and beverage and merchandise sales to help really bolster some of the revenue. And obviously it sounds like from what Mark Woodbury is saying that strategy is paying off pretty well. And you saw that from the earnings report as well, where they noted about a 20% increase in revenue off of 1 month of Epic Universe being on the books. So very likely at the next quarterly earnings call, you're going to see, I would say, a pretty another similar, maybe even higher report on revenue that could be potentially coming in. And in the last video we talked about, a big thing a lot of people were talking about is Mark Woodbury basically saying that Epic Universe is already seeing a market share shift toward them in the first couple of months of Epic Universe being open, because one analyst had asked him, how do you feel like it is lifting up the overall Orlando market? And it says, it sounds like you think there will be some share shifts as well. And Woodbury said there, we think both will drive incremental visits to the market and will drive share shift. And we're seeing that in the first 2 to 3 months of operations. So if you want more breakdown on that, you can see the previous video, kind of go more in depth on that. But he says they're already seeing market share shift after just a couple of months of Epic being open. Another analyst asked him, how do you view success when it comes to Epic opening? He says, incremental attendance, incremental per cap growth. You look at our premium products, incremental growth on things like Universal Express is a great product for us. As part of Epic, we introduced 2,000 new hotel rooms, one premium in the form of a 500 rooms at the Helios, which is positioned within Epic Universe in a geography that is really unparalleled, creating magnificent views and proximity to the park that has just never been seen before. And it's themed into the world experience, so we're seeing great performance in that hotel in terms of occupancy and ADR. And then the two other hotels, Terra Luna and Stella Nova, 1,500 rooms, that are part of our value proposition. The great thing about that is we introduced those 2,000 rooms now have a total of 11,000, and we saw no cannibalization. In fact, we see ADR growth across the resort on the back of those and strong occupancy sustained. So we think that strategy is working. So essentially what he's saying is the new hotels being on property or are on the lineup are not taking away occupancy from the other hotels that they currently have, which would lend towards more people coming in and not just having a shift of an existing audience that are just going to the newer things. So I think looking at that, you would say that that's a pro, that it doesn't seem like they're cannibalizing their existing audience, but they're actually gaining an audience coming in. And here's where it gets really interesting. So one analyst said, what's the potential for Epic expansion? How long do you think it will be before we see a sixth world or maybe a Wicked world? Well, there's that Wicked question, which Mark Woodbury has talked about before, so he's kind of left himself open to that. Woodbury says, I think I'm going to stir the pot when I saw that Wicked sets and said it was a theme park waiting to happen. If you fly over Epic or you look at Google Earth, you'll see how we plan the park, and you'll see a greenfield space between the existing worlds. And that has strategically positioned us to give us flexibility to expand a world or create a new world. And so that's how we are looking at it. I don't really have anything to announce specifically as attractions, but I can tell you that there are multiple attractions in the works, not just at Epic.
I want more.
But when you have the three parks, the cadence of product delivery across the resort to continue to drive the resort is really a key part of our strategy going forward. And like I said at the opening, we have a clear line of sight into how far we think we can take this. It's considerable, and we have a pretty sophisticated and well thought out, thorough, long-range plan that takes us out another decade in terms of product offerings, not just in Orlando, but around the world. So as I've been saying for a while now, and it really isn't like reading between the lines. I mean, Universal has basically been saying this, that they're not only looking to expand Epic, but across the entire resort complex. And so he is basically saying here, they have multiple attractions in the works, not just at Epic. So he's kind of maybe hinting that there are multiple things coming to Epic, as well as the other parks, which we've already seen. Rip Ride Rocket is going to be replaced with something else, and more things to come. Because he's saying multiple things here at Epic and across the entire resort complex and the theme parks. And he did not touch on the Wicked thing, but he has said that before, that Wicked would make a great theme park experience. Personally speaking, I'm not wanting a Wicked land. I understand why they would do it. I understand it's popular. They own that property in terms of the movie side of things. Just personally speaking, I don't care anything about Wicked, but I won't be surprised if Wicked comes into the parks on some level. I don't know if it would be an entire land or world. You could see a show. There's a lot of things they could do. It doesn't necessarily mean it would be an actual attraction, a dedicated land, but I won't be surprised if you do see Wicked coming to the parks. But he's giving a lot of details without going into too much detail there, basically telling you we have a plan throughout this next decade, which I have said that Universal is going to be very aggressive this next decade. And I think he's basically saying that here, that we have a plan, we're going to execute that plan, and he says it's considerable. That's basically him telling you we are going to continue to grow very quickly. And when he says cadence of product delivery, what he's talking about there, at least in my opinion here, is when these things open. And Universal has said before they would like to see a new thing open every single year. If they're able to execute on that cadence where every year for the next decade they have a new attraction coming online, that is going to be very impressive and obviously is going to drive growth to the theme park side. Another analyst asked him, you mentioned you do believe, given the high quality product that you just introduced, that you will take share, meaning market share, from Disney. Do you think that you could ultimately wind up with something approaching an equal attendance split in the market? Mark Woodbury answers, yes. We're in a really strong position to continue to drive incremental growth to the overall marketplace to take share in the process of that. Our chief competitor, Disney, is a strong competitor. They're going to be investing pretty heavily in the market too. I think it's a case of all ships rise with the tide. We will both drive attendance to the marketplace and we'll be able to take our share of that. An interesting thing he kind of says in here, and we talked, this one was in the last video as well, but another thing that's really interesting in his answer here is when he says, we're in a strong position to continue to drive incremental growth to the overall marketplace. I believe what he's talking about is not necessarily just taking the audience from Disney over to them. It's bringing new people into the marketplace, coming into Epic Universe or Universal Studios theme parks. And I think that's also something Disney has kind of indicated as well, because they've even said they think that they're going to break into new markets, and essentially not really being specific, but implying that with the audience that Epic and Universal can bring in, that they're going to come over to Disney as well. So I think that they are talking about bringing in new demographics into their market and not necessarily just talking about trying to convert people from going to Disney over to them. And I think that's a very interesting strategy, because they're not wanting to just steal, or win over the audience from Disney. They're trying to actually reach new people to bring them in. So if you look at it from Disney's perspective, they're looking at that as saying, yeah, if they do that, and they probably think they are doing that, we can benefit from that. Now, I would say Disney, at least this summer, doesn't look like that happened, but that could be something that ends up happening. But I do feel that's a pretty interesting statement to make here. They ask him about the regional parks. He goes, as you mentioned, you opened a couple of weeks ago the Horror Unleashed in Las Vegas. You have the kids one coming up in Texas. You got another horror one, I think, planned for Chicago in 28. How do you think about the right mix between destination resorts in this kind of new category with younger kids, this regional model horror concepts? He goes, I mean, this is all pretty new. Are there other concepts coming? How do you think about the mix and what's coming? And Mark Woodbury says, being able to bring the Universal brand to new audiences, yet again, he's saying new audiences again, that we don't see as cannibalistic to the big destinations. It also gives us the opportunity to focus our big destinations on what we do best. And those destinations are really targeted at families with kids 8 and above. And that allows us to go deep into immersion, to explore the kind of intellectual properties that we think really are resonating with their audience, and to deliver a level of thrill that we're known for. And so for our big destinations, families 8 and above, that created a space for us to go after a new audience, families with kids ages 3 to 8. And we think this is a really great place for us because we have a terrific pipeline of intellectual property. And so Frisco is our first Universal Kids Resort. He also, by the way, says first, so there are more coming. That allows us to both segment the audience and segment our portfolio of properties in the process, build a regional product that is sort of a rite of passage for families and much more accessible for young families in a regional form. By accessible, I think he probably means price point as well there, and also, distance of traveling. They can get to that park from all over Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and in a 300-room hotel on top of it. Great product and a feeder as they age up to become aligned with our brand and then grow into our bigger parks. That is a very interesting statement. It's exactly what I've assumed is the plan here, which is basically what they're saying here is they're trying to get the kids when they're young to get used or know about the Universal properties and resorts, So when they start aging out of the kids type of resorts, they want to go to the big ones. They want to go to Universal Orlando. They want to go to Epic Universe. They want to go to Universal Hollywood. And this is the entire strategy here of introducing Universal to these younger audiences. And this is an audience that Universal has not really gone after before. So it's a very interesting strategy here. And instead of trying to market to them once they're of age and introduce them to Universal and what they have to offer, you get them when they're young. And you've obviously seen Disney did this for decades. You grew up as a Disney kid in the 90s especially. So a lot of families and kids have known about Disney their entire lives because they were introduced to it when they were very young. So they're kind of taking that strategy but applying it to this regional theme park model. And again, he said first one, they are going to do more of these. And I do think there's a decent potential that they bring this into the Orlando area. But given what he's saying here, even if they don't do that, they feel like this is a way to reach that demographic in a way they haven't done before. I do find that pretty interesting and pretty ambitious. But he says it's really a local play. It's a local regional play for Orlando, and it's a local regional play for Los Angeles. There's a lot of space in the rest of the U.S. and internationally to bring to life our horror franchises that we're known for in our film business as well as our parks. And Universal Horror Unleashed is exactly that. In the case of the kids, it's a strong growth market, high family population, and we think there are several of those to explore. You notice he said several to explore. I think you're likely to see, I won't be surprised, I think we end up seeing about 5 perhaps nationwide, even worldwide potentially, of these kids resorts that they will pop up. Because if this is their overall strategy to introduce the Universal brand to these younger audiences, they're going to want to do this strategically kind of in all over the country. And another question here about Epic Universe. So he said, you just said there's a lot of room for expansion at Epic Universe. What's the calculation for adding capacity or new IP to that park versus a greenfield regional or even a resort built elsewhere? Mark Woodbury says, well, when you are trying to drive that full week destination over the long term, which Epic is, it's a long-term play. You've got to have a strong pipeline of continuing to bring new news to the marketplace, and it's not just true about Epic, it's also true about Los Angeles, talking about Hollywood, Universal Hollywood. You'll see in Los Angeles, we're going to next year open a new Fast and Furious roller coaster, and then we have a pipeline of new product coming to Los Angeles. In Japan, it's the same story. We've had a release of Donkey Kong last year that was in addition to our Nintendo World that we opened in Universal Studios Japan, and a pipeline of attractions that will continue to feed Universal Japan as well. So clear line of sight to continue to build those businesses, and then we look for the opportunity to plant the flag in new geographies like the UK. Now, they did have an interesting question about AI usage in the theme park. So this analyst asked, he said, what are some of the ways that theme park operators can take advantage of technology to benefit the business, for instance, to improve the in-park experience by enhancing crowd management through AI tools? Or are there other ways that you're integrating AI into the planning process? Woodbury says, like I'm sure all of you do in business, you are focused on how to leverage AI technologies to the betterment of your operation. We're no different. Probably one of the bigger areas for us that's unique to our business is how AI can assist in predictive maintenance on the rides to reduce maintenance costs, which is a considerable piece of our business. I've never actually heard this been talked about before, but I would assume that they would do this, and maybe any theme park would do this, using AI as a way to figure out issues with rides before they, pop up as major issues. So that's interesting to see there. So being able to employ different ways to look at machine learning in terms of how guests use the park, to be able to direct them to revenue generating opportunities in the form of food and merchandise to manage crowds. And all those things are in deep work right now and part of a big operation that's not just at Parks and Resorts, but as part of NBC and Comcast overall. Now, he didn't touch on this, but Universal does have a patent out there. They haven't implemented it into the parks that I'm aware of, but it is an AI-based system that monitors in-guest behavior. And it goes into talking about being able to reduce the amount of, like, say, guests jumping lines or guests drinking too much or, doing things that impact the experience of other visitors, that this would alert team members either as it's happening or before it happens so that they can get to these, situations quicker. And I think the interesting one there is they even talked about in that patent about how over-serving of alcohol. Basically, they could track you around the park and know if you've had too many drinks, and they would alert a bartender to tell you, hey, you can't have any more because you just had 3 drinks the past hour, whatever it would be. So I definitely think AI is going to become much more part of the theme park experience. Probably not where you notice it as much as a guest. I don't think that's something that necessarily would be a good thing. But I think from an operation standpoint and just eliminating a lot of the bad guest behavior, I think AI is going to become a lot more useful in the theme parks, and especially on the maintenance end. That is very interesting. They probably, I would assume you would save money there by being able to predict whenever you would need some maintenance on rides or other issues that could arise. Another analyst asked him about Comcast properties. How do you prioritize using NBC Universal IPs versus third-party licenses? Obviously, you have a lot of third-party like Harry Potter, but how do you think about that balance? Mark Woodbury says, well, we have a great pipeline of properties. If you look at our base offering, Jurassic Park, Minions, DreamWorks, that pipeline continues to come forward. New movie being made on Shrek. I mentioned Fast and Furious in Hollywood, so the Universal IP is our bread and butter and the foundation of our work. But we're not afraid to go outside when we see an opportunity to drive business with unique properties like Harry Potter or Nintendo. And I think that their willingness to use third-party properties that they do not own does give them a very distinct advantage over Disney. Disney is not going to use third-party IPs unless they literally felt like they had to, or something was so such a no-brainer to do it. As the last time they did it was Pandora. That was before Disney had bought 20th Century Fox, but they did a third-party license with that. That is the last time you have seen that, and Disney has had no, at least showing that they have any sort of appetite to go third parties, whereas Universal can. And I think one thing they may end up doing, which we've talked about on this channel, as well as friends over at Orange Grove 55, about using like anime. I think as big as anime has gotten and as popular as it is, very likely we'll see anime coming to the Universal Studios parks. You did see anime properties, One Piece over in the Fan Fest at Universal Hollywood. And I think strategically using third-party properties where it makes sense, like he says, when you have these unique properties like Harry Potter or Nintendo, does give them an advantage to tap into pop culture at a more relevant level. K-pop Demon Hunters comes to mind, something that really gets hot really quickly. I think Universal is in a prime position to be able to capitalize on that if they deem it is worthy enough to go into the theme parks. So, and obviously them growing their own IPs, which they have improved upon, so they want to feature those and probably will do more of those, but opening themselves up to being able to include other things as they see fit. They did ask him about the Middle East because they said one thing that Disney just announced is that they are opening in the Middle East. Is that something like, and something in the translation there got lost, does that take years before planning? Woodbury says, I know their announcement is pretty fresh. The Middle East has been sort of a boom for a while. Yet it's just a place that you look, investigate, and make decisions about where your priorities are at. Our priorities right now are driving Epic to full throttle and to execute on the United Kingdom. And then our mid strategy at the same time, looking ahead for other places and opportunities. So he's saying right then and there, their number one priority right now is getting Epic Universe at full throttle, in his words.
It's beautiful.
So I think that's a great thing if you're talking about getting the most out of your investment, but obviously wanting Epic Universe to perform great, which also means getting more guests in that park. I mean, currently you have about a 22,000 guest cap on that park. They want 40 to 50,000 guests in that park potentially on a day-to-day basis, which also likely means that you are looking at new things coming to Epic Universe because they are going to have to add attractions in here, is my guess. Even once these rides become much more operational, much more efficient, you're still likely to be looking at a wait time issue. Plus, you talk about when it rains at Epic Universe, you only have about 4 rides that are open. So obviously you need some indoor attractions, which I have also heard they have hired some companies that specifically deal in indoor type of attractions that they've hired to design some things. So I think this is something they are actively looking at right now. But in terms of wanting Epic to be, I guess you could just say, full operational efficiency, that is a great thing to hear. That seems like that is their main focus right now. And the other one would be the UK. But the UK is still in a planning process. So right now, essentially, as the business stands, most of their effort is on Epic Universe, at least from Mark Woodbury. And then that's the end of the conference there, basically. So I think it's some very interesting things he said. So he didn't go into great detail on a lot of these things, but he is giving you a few breadcrumbs in terms of what they are thinking here. And I think obviously from what he's saying, they're very happy with Epic Universe's performance thus far. They already feel like it's eating into market share from Disney, and that they are fully committed to getting that park to be fully operational and dealing with, even admitting there are going to be some issues when you open up a brand new theme park, nothing that they weren't expecting, and really focusing, even said full throttle on getting Epic to that point. And I think obviously taking that with what he said about multiple things coming to Epic Universe as well as the other parks, he's basically telling you right then and there, that they are actively developing things. Things are coming, and I think these things are going to be coming much quicker than I think many people may anticipate. I think a lot of people have felt Epic Universe just opened. They're not going to be developing things right away for Epic, but I don't think that is going to be the case from the rumblings I have heard and from just the sheer momentum that Universal has. If they are already seeing a market share shift off of Epic Universe, which right now is the weakest that is ever going to be. They still are working through these things. So in the next year, 2 years, Epic Universe is only going to become stronger. It's only going to become a bigger destination. And if you want to capitalize on that even further, doubling down into that park more makes a ton of sense, as well as adding things to the existing parks. And I personally think that within easily 5 years, you see things come to Epic Universe, but I think it could be even sooner. So even, they even admitted to Disney is going to be investing heavily as well. But Disney historically builds pretty slow. Now, until they prove otherwise, I'm just going to assume most of the things Disney is building is going to take 5+ years to get done. I think Universal building much quicker. I think this is when Universal has quite the advantage, and this could really be the time when you see that differentiating factor here, because Universal just builds quicker. And that is going to be an asset for them, because by the time Disney gets open, the lands that they are currently building, and I think the last one being Villains won't be open until sometime in 2032, you could see multiple new lands, rides, attractions opening up at Universal Studios before Disney gets done with these things. So essentially Disney's answer to Epic Universe just coming online, later in the 2020s into the early 2030s, they would then all potentially have to then answer for the new things that Universal has built in that time span. And I think Universal has been and will continue to push more of the creativity side when it comes to theme parks. And Disney, I think, is kind of stuck in this reactionary mode of they're not really driving innovation. They're more or less reacting to what Universal has been doing and trying to do their own versions of it. I don't think you would see 3 lands under development right now, a 4th one in Villains Land coming to the Disney parks if it was not for Epic Universe and the things that Universal Studios is doing. And I think they're going to continue to do that. And again, he said they have a decade-plus plan that is very significant in what they're going to do. He's telling you right then and there that they are not slowing down, that they are going to continue to add things to these parks. And I think they're going to do it in a much quicker timeline. And if you look at Epic, if you added another land there or a couple of indoor attractions, 2 or 3 things to that park in the next 5 years, you're going to look at Epic Universe. And I already think Epic Universe is one of the best theme parks that has ever been built. Obviously, it's not perfect, but it is a fantastic park. They're just going to continue to develop that park even further. And I think they've even said before, they want to be the first choice in Orlando. And being the first choice in Orlando means competing not only with Disney, which they already are doing that. That means competing with Magic Kingdom. And Magic Kingdom is the #1 theme park in the world. And this also could make some sense why Disney felt the need to add to Magic Kingdom to do what they're doing in Frontierland. Now, I'm not sitting here and saying I think it's a smart thing to get rid of the rivers of America, but I think this could be why Disney felt the need to expand Magic Kingdom to have new offerings there, understanding that that is exactly what Universal is planning to do, is go after that top crown. They may never get there. They surely won't get there within a year or two, but it is their long-term plan here and what they want to shoot for. And listen, I love competition, so I think that's a great thing. I don't know if Universal will get there, but I think putting the pressure on Disney is a good thing for the consumer, because that's going to force Disney to try and improve their offerings. And then you're just kind of Universal being even more competitive, trying to reach that. And I've said before, Disney's never had to deal with this. They've never had this much competition on the theme park side. So they're in uncharted waters in terms of reacting to this, understanding Universal is becoming a much bigger competitor. And it's very likely, given the projections out there, at the very least, including the next 5 years, if you take 10% of market share that Universal has eaten the past 10 years, the projection there is that Universal could eat another 5% in the next 5 years. That would be 15% of market share potentially that Universal has taken away from Disney in a 15-year span. And that is not insignificant. And that is getting to the point, I did another video talking about the tipping point method or ideology when it comes to business. So while Disney can still have the bigger share of that, you hit a certain point around 35% of market share, you are looked at upon as a co-leader in the theme park market. And I think that's exactly what Universal wants to do. And they're not making any qualms about that. And it seems like they have a very distinct strategy that they are executing this next decade. And I'm very excited to see what they will do. And I'm really curious to see how quickly they're going to be adding things in the next, say, 5 years, because I think once Epic came open, once they got that done, you're just going to see more investment into the parks, continuing the momentum that they have built. And when you're talking about competing with Disney, I mean, it's kind of up to Disney to try and break up that momentum. And Disney has kind of left the door open for this as well. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, Disney didn't really have any competition. They owned the theme park market. They can kind of do whatever they wanted to do. They had a unique product offering, and now Universal has developed their product offering that is coinciding with Disney, while Disney's been doing a lot of things that have not been really popular with their fan base that goes to the theme parks in terms of pricing, things going away, perks going away, all the things we've talked about before in other videos, leaving the door open for Universal on top of what they've already been doing to present a different alternative to Disney that a lot of people have come over to and said that, they enjoy the experience. And I can say, having, been going to Disney much longer than Universal, I've really enjoyed what Universal has to offer, and it has improved quite a bit. And since I started going, I first went to Universal when I was in 8th grade, and it has gotten much more sophisticated. It's gotten a lot more streamlined. Like, their offerings are improving basically year by year, and obviously Epic Universe changes that as well, makes that a completely new level of the offerings that they do. And I think they're just going to continue to do that. So in many ways, I think Universal would have continued to go this trajectory anyways without what Disney was doing. But Disney doing the actions they have been doing, I think have kind of opened the door even more to Universal on what they've been doing. So Disney is going to have to do something to try and break up that momentum, because I don't think Universal, from their perspective, are going to let their foot off the pedal to allow Disney to gain back that momentum. And like I said, I think competition is great. I think if you're a theme park fan, the next 10 to 20 years are going to be fantastic with new offerings, new things to check out. And I am completely here for it. I love a good fight, and I think competition is nothing but great for the consumer. And, when you have two major destinations competing for your vacation dollar, they're going to try and entice you to come to their properties based off of brand new experiences, giving audiences what they want. And I think that's where the consumer wins. So I love to see it, and I'm very excited to see what comes of this and how quickly Universal is going to, say, expand Epic Universe and the new things they have coming to the Universal parks as well. So a lot of interesting insight here, and when there's anything else that comes out about this, we will talk about it on this channel as well. But for now, that is going to be it, though, for this video. So if you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comment, what did you think about what Mark Woodbury had to say at this investor conference and the expansions that are coming to Universal Studios. And until next time, we will see you in the parks.